Urban air mobility verbunner.
GDP today. In the EU, currently traffic congestion alone costs roughly €100 billion a year and is predicted to increase to roughly 300 billion per year by 2030. As a result, cities are demanding for efficient and effective mobility solutions. We think that vertical takeoff and landing maneuver is what makes the eVTOL a perfect mobility solution for highly congested cities.
Perfect. Looking at the picture here on the right, we have three major components that makes this concept a reality. The first one is technology, the second is the infrastructure, and the third, last but not the least, is the business perspective. Moving ahead to the next slide, we have some people believe that UAM, that is urban air mobility, is a today's thing. That is, it has been trending from past recent years, but that is not the truth. So where it started basically 66 years back. What do you think, Mario, on that?
Definitely agree with you, Ian. And the concept of urban-centered air transportation isn't new and definitely has been attempted as early as 1950s with the advent of commercial helicopters. Back then, helicopter services began with mail transportation before moving to passenger transport. But then by 1970s, several helicopter-based air taxis were already in business, including the extensive on-demand helicopter service in Boston. I think that these services, even though they've disappeared in the United States due to the high-profile accidents and negative public response to noise and pollution, as well as the operational expense, they are still, of course, very related and very much they influenced on the current urban air mobility industry. Like helicopters, our flying cars concepts shared a common vision of mass use in urban and suburban environments. These concepts have not yet been proven successful due to technical infrastructure and cost and regulatory and other challenges, which we're going to cover later. But I hope you agree that the timing is right to revisit this mode of transportation, and hopefully UIM will definitely address all the challenges and shape the world for better.
Absolutely, it does make sense. Moving ahead, we have the physics of flight, as in the landscape of electric aircraft architectures, where we have different set of basically the different manufacturers coming up with their prototypes ranging from multicopters to quadcopters to fixed wings. Why don't you just highlight some of these concepts to the audience, Maria?
With pleasure, Yajan. So today we see a number of different configurations being developed, all depending on the manufacturer and, of course, their targeted mission profile. For example, the intra versus the intercity mobility. However, compared to the traditional single main rotor helicopter with combustion engine, an eVTOL is significantly quieter, more reliable, and significantly less expensive. As we can see from the picture, multicopters, for instance, especially low surface load concepts, they're fantastic at providing hovering stability and efficiency. They're also the least noisy configuration, hence, of course, favored by the public. They are, however, not well suited for high speeds. Tilt rotor or tilt wing aircraft, whatever you prefer, conversely can provide good forward speed, but of course are more complex and less energy efficient for hovering. And if we look at fixed wing concepts like Lithiumion, for instance, they can operate at highest speeds possible, yet they're considered the loudest and most susceptible to sudden gusts. Different use cases, of course, in a city or intercity, for example, they will be served by different designs.
Perfect. Also, if I talk about the eVTOL concepts that are present globally, 23% account for the multi-rotors. And if I talk about the fixed wing, which has got the maximum speed, there are just 5 concepts out there, including Lithiumion as one. Also, if I talk about the other major contributor is the tilt X rotors for the eVTOL concepts that are present globally. Also, not to miss, a few are also the e-rotor crafts and hover bikes. And if I talk about the passenger capacity being a prime focus, more than 38% eVTOL concepts are able to carry just one passengers. But if I talk about the maximum efficiency that can be covered by contributing to maximum passengers, as in for the air travel, more than 32% eVTOL concepts have the capacity to carry more than 3 passengers. So these
That's
are few
very,
of the
very.
prototypes. Mhm.
Sorry, I was just saying that's very, very interesting statistics. Definitely just highlighting how many different architectures are there on the market. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, perfect. So architecture is one thing, Maria, but if we talk about the battery life, which actually makes these architectures a reality or a possibility, we have another slide that talks about the roadmap for the lithium-ion batteries. Would you like to highlight this?
Yeah, of course, I'd be happy to talk through. So basically, as we can see from this slide, the information is taken from Roland Berger's study, and we sort of tried presenting it in a bit nicer way to just show that there is still a map, there is still a long road ahead. Of course, one of the major factors influencing urban air mobility is battery life. And of course, improved battery capacity still needs to be achieved. eVTOL industry has benefited a lot from the automotive industry colleagues developing electrical vehicles, but we still need to make sure that due to a great variety of aircraft architecture as well as the mission profiles, it is impossible to just create a one-size-fits-all type battery. And so various solutions are currently being designed and tested, as can be seen from the picture. For typical inner urban operation, an aircraft would need a battery capacity of approximately 30 minutes to be viable and basically to make economic sense. And this may soon be possible because experts believe that battery energy densities of roughly 500 watt hour per kilogram for electrical propulsion will be developed soon. However, we only, as we can see from the very right-hand side of the slide, that they're not expected to occur until the year 2030. I think we still have quite a long road ahead, quite a few trials, but definitely we need to make sure that we work with automotive manufacturers. But I guess, of course, demand much more.
It does make sense. It does make sense. Moving on to the next slide, when we talk about the urban air mobility technological requirements, there are few that I have come up across recently. The first one that actually gauged me was the integration of artificial intelligence. So talking about this, recent developments in machine learning and other forms of AI have become a key enabler for aero mobility. That is promising the type of sophisticated autonomy that will be necessary to deploy eVTOL air taxis on a larger scale. Also, not to miss, there are companies that are working to make AI integration as safe and reliable enough to meet today's standards for airworthiness certification. Moving on to the next point, that is the protecting eVTOLs against cyber threats. That also has become a key priority for eVTOL manufacturers or the vehicle manufacturers, with the systems facing the same threats as all aerial platforms, along with a range of unique challenges that this concept brings. Because of an intrusion, eVTOLs can start raining from the skies to the ground, be it in London, be it in New York, but that can be a possibility. So cybersecurity to have particular importance as operators rely on electronic control systems on the ground and in the air. If I talk about the integration of 5G, as in using the LTE technology or the 5G, that has become the latest version of mobile and cellular networks that will also become a key component of new urban mobility. If I talk about 5G, the revolution will play a monumental role in transforming urban mobility. From connected autonomous vehicles to enhanced public transportations, nearly every modality of mobility will be connected to 5G network services when available, just to ensure the smooth operations. Going ahead, we have the existing and potential market. If we talk about the US as one, would you like to highlight the US potential market, Maria?
Sure. So regarding the US potential market, well, and existing one, of course, I guess we definitely have to mention the Elevate project, which is expected to go live in LA, Dallas, and another third international city starting in 2023. These services will have human pilots, a short range of 20 to 50 kilometers, and a focus on intercity mobility. But of course, the reason we are looking at the states and the reason we are so interested in congestion is because transportation is, of course, a key driver of any city's attractiveness to residents and employees. Despite significant increases in connectivity and advances in digital technology and infrastructure, traffic congestion is a very costly issue, and of course, we need to resolve it. Of course, congestion also results in delays in shipping goods, in wasted fuel and electricity, wear and tear on public infrastructure, toll on the environment, everything. But of course, personally, I very much hope that we can eliminate all of the above problems with the help of the UAM. What do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I talk about the USA, looking at the short-term, mid-term, and long-term perspective, so there are major cities like Dallas and Los Angeles that are attracting OEM manufacturers. Since I talk about from the perspective of a country, USA have cities that are not that old, but I think they're too old in terms of infrastructure for the innovative technology. It is not easy in the country, as in US, to change the regulation quickly with the technology development. To operate this machine, few things should be in mind. That is, we need the cities who are smart in terms of technology and who are connected. So going ahead for the regional, as in the global perspective, we have this slide here that talks about the traffic congestion in the cities across the globe. And if I talk about the traditional cities like London, Rome, etc., I don't see UM has become a reality as of now to operate this machine. As in the infrastructure is not in place, first, I believe. Second, the city who are willing to change the regulation should be in the top priority. On the other hand, we should have smart and recent cities. We have smart and recent cities like Singapore and Dubai, who holds a lot of potential for the development of UAM. So apart from Singapore and Dubai, we also have the short-term potential markets over here, which talks about the Los Angeles market as one here, and we also have the Mexico City here and Sao Paulo in Brazil. We also have Melbourne, which is being selected as a third city for Uber operations in the short-term perspective by the year 2023. And if going ahead for the next year, we have Paris here, where they have talked about that in the 2024 Olympics in Paris, they want to have the UM operations live. What are your thoughts on this, Maria?
That's very, very interesting statistics and very interesting facts. I think for Paris, for example, even though they are planning to use the urban air mobility vehicles to showcase potential, to showcase the technology, I think we're still road ahead from it being service offered many, many people within the city. Of course, just commenting on the whole UIM regional and market, potential market, we know that eVTOL will offer to move commuter transportation into the third dimension, the sky. Dubai, for example, which is at the moment ranked 70th by GDP, has one of the most aggressive UIM programs on the planet. And of course, they invest heavily, very heavily, in their future promise of affordable air taxi and private electric air vehicle services. Dubai commenced test flights in 2017 and has an ambitious goal of launching commercial operations of its autonomous aerial taxi service in the near future. And in general, the first pilot projects will get off the blocks in the early 20s, to my mind. And Dubai, Singapore, Dallas, LA, Tokyo, those cities are the pioneers of the urban air mobility, and they're definitely keen to provide concept, generate publicity, positive user experiences. Personally, as someone who lives in the United Kingdom, it's quite sad. You see that London is not one of the ones who will be taking the lead and being a pioneer of the urban air mobility. But of course, we have to face the reality, as we've covered on one of the previous slides. It's about, apologies, we'll cover it on the next slide. It is about so many so many different points which need to work together, so many different details and many different stakeholders which all need to come into place.
Yeah. Talking about the current slide itself, Maria, I have one more thing to add that according to some UM experts, since I was talking to few people in the industry, I came across that few UM experts, they think that UM is only possible in the developed country. But what about the developing countries, I believe, which are new and can build new infrastructure? So this scenario is something experts should also consider because cities in Middle East and Asia would be at the top of the rankings for upcoming year where in the midterm to the long term, we can actually see more number of cities being targeted for the UM operations in the Middle East and the Asian Pacific region. Moving ahead to the next slide, where we were just talking about the industry stakeholders. Uh, would you like, you were mentioning something, Maria? Please go ahead.
Sure. So, as I've already started saying, I believe that UIM industry is an entire system of systems, and it has to be pursued by a diverse group, and it is already pursued by a diverse group of stakeholders, including eVTOL operators, communication system service providers, data service providers, regulatory authorities, and so on and so forth. But of course, we need to understand that success depends upon all stakeholders having trust in each other and the essential elements of the air traffic management system. This will require reliable and available communication, predictable and consistent navigation, accessible and trusted surveillance. And this elements coupled with tried and tested procedures, redundancy, continuous training will be mission critical in enabling the systems to operate reliably and safely. Also, regarding the social acceptance, which you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, social acceptance or overcoming the psychological barriers, it's expected to play a major role in shaping the eVTOL industry. We all talk about the vehicle itself, but we need to understand that the vehicle is first and foremost designed for the public to use. As consumers are at the core of the elevated mobility ecosystem, we need to be making sure that we're addressing their needs, or the urban air mobility manufacturers and stakeholders are. Over half of participants of the Deloitte 10,000 consumer study view autonomous aerial passenger vehicles as potentially viable solution to roadway congestion. Yet, unfortunately, 80% out of 10,000 people think that they can't
Makes
trust
sense.
vehicles to be safe. They don't believe vehicles to be safe. So I think there are quite a few problems which we need to address.
Makes sense. To conclude this slide, as in to bring the future closer, the UN experts need to find cities who has a combination of factors. For example, the city which is modern first, where they can change the regulations quite easily and quickly. The city that has got money as well. The city that has the potential willingness to partner with company and other factors. Because it is not possible if we talk about the UM ecosystem. A single company cannot come forward tomorrow and change the landscape. There has to be a strategic alliances across companies, across value chain. So when we talk about the value chain, we have in the next slide, we have the next slide that talks about the value chain. So if you allow, should I start with the value chain, Maria?
Sure, please go ahead. I'll go after you.
Yeah. So this value chain, it talks about the value addition to the entire ecosystem at every stage that is being added. To start with, we have design, development, and production here, where we talk about the different architects of urban aircraft. So this talks about the design, development, and production vendors or vehicle manufacturers that are ensuring to build next generation aerostructures with user-friendly designs and architectures, which will be suitable for various applications in the aviation industry. To mention few, these could be the carrying passengers, obviously, or a cargo delivery, or the usages in the military applications in the near future. Not to miss, there are also air racing that is also being added to the list. Going ahead, with current integration of composites, fiberglass, and lightweight objects, vendors are ensuring a longer life cycle of their prototypes with least MRO required. Now, once the flights are successfully tested, industry will foresee increasing models coming from multiple operators, including leasing companies, and in some of the cases, HNIs, as in the high net worth individuals who can afford to fly, which provides ease of operations. Now, talking about the air traffic management as another contributor, a significant one, I can say that, much like the conventional ATC, a new generation kind of air traffic management must be adopted, like a change from a centric one to a decentric one, with the use of blockchain technology, maybe. So, regulatory bodies, along with vehicle manufacturers, are taking rightful measures in this process. The current infrastructures, if I talk about the ground infrastructure, as in the installation and maintenance of VTOL pads, the current infrastructure requires vertiports and can accommodate the different architectures of eVTOLs along with the charging stations. And to conclude, the final step is to provide a user-friendly and easy access to end users to book their flights. Do you want to add anything, Maria, to this?
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind, I'll just say a few words. So, no, I definitely agree with that. It's all very, very complex. The whole value chain is a combination of steps which needs to be taken by so many stakeholders. And no doubt that UAM supply chain will include third-party suppliers for motors, batteries, flight control systems, and other eVTOL technology. It's a new business opportunity for collaboration. That's what I think. And I think it's very exciting. And due to the new electric propulsion OEM or original equipment manufacturers, for instance, they'll probably play a very significant role in maintenance, repair, and overhaul MRO of the new VTOL fleet. New MRO support methods and on diagnostic systems will ensure high urban air mobility, aircraft dispatch reliability, and on-time performance. But I guess, as I said, that's just one example. There's so many different ways in which the industry can collaborate.
Makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. Would you like to talk about the next slide? That is the network clusters we have across the industry.
Sure, let me cover that one. So regarding the network clusters, I know this slide may be a bit confusing. I apologize for that in advance. I think it's quite an interesting representation of how complex the current relationships are between the stakeholders. If we have a look at, for instance, the bottom right-hand corner or even the center of the picture, and I would like to use German UAM manufacturer, for example, Volocopter, to illustrate my point. In July 2017, the aviation startup Volocopter, they agreed a finance deal over 25 million euros with the automotive firm Daimler from Stuttgart and the technology investor from Berlin and a few other people, a few further investors. Volocopter chose a range of investors with various backgrounds, and to their mind, it was the best idea because automotive companies specifically, are intensely interested in the mobility of the future, in autonomous driving or electrical mobility, for example, and hence Daimler was a very valuable strategic partner. But of course, having people like Intel on board was also very exciting because they provided a totally different viewpoint on the whole industry. And yes, I definitely believe in a huge need to strengthen collaboration within the ecosystem. And perhaps to do so, participants should develop and work on an integrated framework spanning manufacturing, operations, and certification to advanced technologies involved in eVTOL aircraft. Right now, when the UAM market is in its infancy state and is open to potential players from a variety of backgrounds, it's far from clear who will run the farthest with this vision. My only advice for all stakeholders is to be as open-minded and open to collaboration as possible, because yeah, that's just all for the benefit of innovation and humanity's better, safer, more convenient future. And I guess a future of very exciting future with
Absolutely, Maria.
what do you personally feel about that? How excited are you? scale from 1 to 10.
Absolutely. So since you have already you have been talking to many industry participants when we talk about the network clusters, and even I have been talking to many participants. So we are pretty much excited to actually see this concept becoming a reality from a dream, and that is why we chose this subject together. So going ahead,
Urban air mobility bunner.
so we welcome the questions. Maria, for you, I already can see there are a few questions lined up for you. So someone
Sure.
is asking about the Alki Sky Taxi, air taxi that are using the hydrogen fuel.
Yes. What exactly? I'm sorry, I can't see the question. Do you mind reading the question out for me, please?
Yeah. So there is a question for you that is, what do you think about Alki Sky vehicle announced earlier this year?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually been reading the article about them recently. So I know that in the past couple of months, we've seen the emergence of the first commercial hydrogen-powered semi-trucks in California. And recently, we've seen the first fully electric VTOL flying sky taxi from America, Alki Sky Technology, is what I believe they call themselves. And what's quite interesting to my mind about those guys is that, let's just be honest, the current lithium battery technology offers relatively poor energy density compared to hydrogen fuel cells. And the American company decided to go for the hydrogen fuel cells as their choice, all because they offer up to 10 times more the energy density of their battery competitors, as well as fast refueling. And basically, that's their way to deal with or apologies, that's if they can deal with the inefficiencies of producing, transportation, and storing, I guess they will definitely succeed. In terms of the way it looks, the way it feels compared to other people on the market, well, it's a 6-rotor, it's a multicopter designed by BMW Design Works, if I'm not mistaken, and it is the one targeted at 5 people with a pilot. So they definitely want to have it piloted rather than autonomous upon launch. So hopefully the public will favour that. And in terms of the safety, as far as I remember, they have the airframe parachute. And of course, it's understandable that it still needs to take some time for the parachute to bring the vehicle down to earth very gently. And I really look forward to how they're going to overcome that barrier, because, of course, there will be a death zone, as we call it in aerospace, when you still don't have the ballistic parachute to open, and you're just waiting for the vehicle to, and hoping for the vehicle not to get damaged and not to basically collapse. But all in all, I think it's a very exciting startup. I think it's a very exciting company in development, and definitely hydrogen fuel cells is something quite exciting to look forward to. And hopefully, if they can succeed, maybe people will look into adopting that technology.
Perfect, perfect. I hope that answers your question, Robin. Then we have another question from Joe. He talks about should eVTOL craft be sold to the public as private transport or be run only as a shared ride or public air taxi service? As per my understanding, I guess initially it should be as a public transport. It should be run as a public transport because in the initial phase, even people would not be very much adaptability of autonomy will not be there for the public, as in the considering the public acceptance. So first, it needs to be piloted, and it should not be a private-owned vehicle because it will require a lot of training and certifications for that too. What are your thoughts on it, Maria? Should it be sold to the public or should it be run as a private transport?
I definitely agree with you. I think first and foremost, it has to be targeted at a bigger public. I think we need to first make it accessible, and we can always add the element of luxury to it later on. I have been in
Makes sense.
touch with one of vehicle manufacturers recently, and they have assured me that they are definitely against of displaying their UIM prototype at a very at a yacht show and very luxurious events, which is targeted, of course, at people with who will be looking to have it as a personal vehicle. And they said that in their personal interest, they would definitely want to have it open to community, accessible, because it's all about making everyone fly, let everyone's dreams come true. So hopefully, let's start and give it all everyone to use, make it all accessible and safe, and then we can always use it as something we can use personally in our back garden.
Makes sense. So we have another question from Robin that talks about, do you think architects should be designing ground infrastructure now? And if they are, do you know that any that are currently working on solutions? Basically, someone is trying to understand about the vertiports, I guess. And to mention about this, to answer this question, yes, there is one company that is Skyports that is working on this concept. So they have introduced the Voloport, that is the world's first vertiport, and they are trying to launch this also in this year, as in October. So Skyports is basically a London-based startup that is working on the third dimension for the sky, that is for the regular transportation in the cities where these prototypes can come and land. So basically providing an infrastructure for the vertical takeoff and landing. Would you like to add something to it?
Yeah, I was going to mention Skyports as well. Definitely the ones out there in the market. Regarding the infrastructure itself, I think we sort of underestimate how much is there already available. I know that, of course, using both ground-based roof facilities and rooftops for takeoff and landing might appear to be the obvious way to go, but I think urban aircraft needs a safe landing zone first and foremost, and it needs to be unobstructed by buildings and or trees, and which could make this strategy hard to implement in densely populated areas. On the other hand, having said that, of course, the heliports which already exist in the cities, which have been in use even by the aforementioned New York City Airlines back in 1950s and 1970s, they're still there. And so many more buildings have been built since. Their rooftops, parks, etc. All of that can be used, at least to some extent, at least at the very beginning, for the urban air mobility industry to start. I guess we need to showcase that it can be a very low investment industry to begin with. And then when people believe in it more and when people start using it more often, I guess we can start investing in proper infrastructure and not just adapting the one they already have. But we definitely have enough already, I think. Some cities more than others.
Absolutely. For the developing cities, I guess in terms of infrastructure, that will be an advantage for them because they can change their infrastructure as per the requirement of this concept.
Oh, absolutely. I know that there is a London-based luxury hotel which decided that they want to introduce the helipods. So hopefully those people, the luxury hotels, the business offices, those will be the first people to adapt the use of specific infrastructure for the urban air mobility vehicles.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next question. The question is, what is the first city where autonomous flying taxis will be rolled out?
What do you think?
The world is talking about it, I guess. Among the top few cities, as already mentioned, Los Angeles, Dallas, Melbourne are the few that has already been chosen. Apart from it, Dubai and Singapore is attracting a lot of market potential over there. Not to miss the Tokyo in Japan. Looking at, and because of why, if we consider why these cities are being chosen, mostly the major reason is the traffic congestion. and the amount of loss that a driver is bearing, that a person is bearing during those traffic congestions, not just the loss of money, but also the time as well. What do you think, Maria?
No, definitely the ones you've mentioned, and definitely Singapore for me and Dubai, because how keen they are to introduce this new industry. Unfortunately, it's not all about the city congestion. So, for example, again, a perspective from someone coming from the UK, London is very bad with traffic, and those who've been to London at least once, they know what I'm talking about. And hence, of course, we have different modes of transport. But the problem with London isn't just about it being congested. It's about first, as I've said, the vertiports which are already in use, or helipads which are already there. There are very, very few of them already being built. The certification is quite difficult. Proving airworthiness experts that the vehicles are safe to fly in London is very difficult. Hopefully there will be very soon some test flights conducted, and hopefully there will be some people who will take the lead on it. But it's definitely not just trying to resolve the issue of congestion. It's trying to make sure that every single person, infrastructure, safety, security, everyone is satisfied. And of course, that AI, 5G, Internet of Things, all the software, all of that is already in place and available, and connectivity. It of course needs to be coming. You need to stay in touch with everyone in the airspace within the city. So I guess again another reason London is so difficult, because it's managed by so many very big airports. It's a no-fly zone pretty much quite everywhere. So that's why you're not allowed to use your drones, which is good for urban air mobility, but still very hard to prove that you can be using your vehicles.
Absolutely. So this question is directed towards you. What is the primary source of energy that will be used for autonomous flying taxis? I guess you would be happy to highlight this. What is the primary source of energy that will be used for autonomous flying taxis?
Yes, I think we've covered the energy source. Are we talking about batteries again? Are we talking about fuel cells? Are we talking about when they will ever be flying with the help of I don't know, sun, just being wind powered or any alternative energy powered? I don't think so. I think it's all about just developing what we already have, the batteries, which, as we've mentioned before, the lithium-ion batteries, potentially using the other batteries, the alkaline batteries, which of course everyone has in all households. But unlike the lithium-ion batteries, the energy density is lower, but they are of course much safer. But yeah, I believe that to begin with, the way the aircraft will be powered, if we're talking about eVTOL, E being of course the electrical part of the vertical takeoff and landing vehicle. If they're eVTOLs, then it is lithium-ion batteries, which we've covered in our previous slides. But I guess I'll be very happy to cover afterwards the use of hydrogen fuel cells or any other alternative energy sources. But I think lithium-ion is the most probable way forward.
Makes sense. So the next question is a quite tricky question, Maurya. So someone is inquiring about who is currently leading this market.
Oh, would you like to say something?
I'm not just sure should we mention few names here or not.
I don't know if we should be mentioning any names. I definitely don't want to be signing under myself saying that I have some favorites and some not so favorites.
So that will not be justified here, I guess.
Let's just say that there are definitely quite a few providers, and as we've mentioned before, there are people who develop in different types of vehicles for different needs. So, for example, someone from Volocopter at the moment can be looking at inner city flights, partially because of the technology they're developing. Of course, it's multi-rotor, so the speeds are quite slow, and it's just their model, I guess, as well. They are looking to operate within the city first and foremost. And somebody from, for instance, Bell helicopters, they can be developing a slightly, well, a definitely larger aircraft and wanting to take it out of the city and operate between the cities. I don't think we should be putting everyone on scale, on the same scale, because as many as there are vehicle manufacturers, um, there are that many favors and so that many benefits and drawbacks to each one of them. But I think I would say try and choose a mode which you want to look for. So the use case, for instance, the inner city, and try and choose your favorite. I think personally, I would refrain from saying who I think will leave the industry. Someone who will be as open-minded as possible. Let's put it that way. Someone who will want to collaborate with others.
I believe that in next 5 years, more newcomers will appear in the market, but only the serious ones will remain. Now that EASA and other regulatory bodies have come up with their certifications, now the market is going to see an interesting part. Now with regulations at hand, we will see who is a serious company and who is not, I guess. Does that make sense?
Definitely, definitely. I think it's about proving that rather than somebody who can start and show them their best in 1 month and just run out of the technology and just lower the pace. I think it's about running a marathon. It's about running a very long distance, um, very sort of small pace, I would say, but long distance journey it is. So the one who will show consistently their interest and their progress will be the one who does it.
Makes sense. So jumping on to the next question, it's an interesting question which someone has asked. Do you think engineering education needs to evolve so new professionals are ready to take on the challenges, especially in the area of cybersecurity and 5G connectivity?
Oh, okay, that's very interesting. Well, somebody with an engineering background, with an aerospace engineering background, I think we definitely need to make sure that our education evolves because the world around us evolves. Your M industry will require a totally different type of people with an extremely varied skill set. And I guess we'll need generalist engineers who can see the bigger picture and have a strong understanding of many engineering disciplines, as well as specialists who can dive deep into their specific areas. I guess the aerospace engineers, for instance, I think we should be taught electrical circuits, battery technologies, and power supplies, due to, of course, avionics being enabled for our mechanism to fly, and of course, vice versa. Hopefully, those studying electrical engineering could learn how to apply their knowledge in industry. But aside from everything said about the technical background, I think first and foremost we need to be taught business and management skills. It's about engineering is not about can you put one and one together? Can you add a few things together? It's about can you communicate what you want to achieve to other people? Can you actually solve someone's problems? Is what you want to design is it actually needed? I think being able to communicate with others and collectively come and solve a problem, that's what needs to be taught. And hopefully this will be the future.
Absolutely. This will actually give rise to a lot of courses, as in the subjects in terms of cybersecurity and 5G connectivity, because the application of these topics is not just limited to a technological perspective, but the application areas are huge and vast and are being used in almost every industry, particularly. And not to miss the AI as well, because machine learning is also taking a very upward trend in terms of the education system, the adaptability of AI and cybersecurity and 5G. So that is one thing I believe, yes, a lot of professional institutes will see these courses being adopted in their subjects. Moving ahead,
No, absolutely. I think so.
yeah,
Just to finish off on that point, I think it's very exciting. The future is very exciting, and if we make sure that everyone, all our students, want to actually work in this industry, if we actually tell them about all the potential and all the current developments, like the AI, like the 5G, like the Internet of Things. If we let them get involved in it, I think there'll be only better achievements we'll have later in the future. So definitely, hopefully we'll get it all sorted, and hopefully continuing education will change. And
makes sense. So another question talks about, from a technical point of view, which are the highest challenges manufacturers are currently facing?
I think, well, we've covered it definitely in our presentation. Would you like to comment something on that?
I guess from a technical perspective, the design perspective is one, looking at the aerodynamics, using the right amount of battery, as in the support of battery, along with the aerostructure, as in we talk about the architecture of the flight, physics of flight. When we talked about the physics of flight, that is one thing that the OEM, as in the vehicle manufacturers, have actually need to consider. What do you think, Maria?
Definitely software and avionics. So elaborating on the point from before about AI, I think before we get diskilled by AI, and before we lose control of our surrounding and place AI inside a protocol that we can't then challenge, I think we need to ensure that all digital integrity, digital transparency, coherent integration is at the heart of evolution of UIM management, policy making, and system implementation. I think cybersecurity in all vehicles is one of the greatest challenges as well. You've briefly mentioned it. I think we definitely need to make sure that, in addition to being secure against malicious attacks, one key requirement is to have a safe software library as a backbone of your technology and infrastructure operators center. That's one of the main issues with public acceptance. People can't understand what exactly will be exposed, which information will be exposed and available to everyone, and which information will be hidden and only managed by the UIM manufacturers and operators. Of course, propulsive technology, including the energy storage, of course, the human machine interface and cabin interior. And if we're talking to ever go autonomous, how do we make sure that people sitting inside a UIM vehicle know which button they need to press should they need to? And how do we make sure that people who are pilots, which will definitely need to be in place there first, how do we make sure that they know how to operate those vehicles, they have enough training, and they can, for instance, switch from one vehicle to another one without much time needed, without need to get a different certificate, different training. Of course, in the normal aviation industry, the good old aviation aerospace industry, it takes quite a lot of time for a pilot to change from one vehicle to another, to change a plane, shall we say. But I really hope that urban air mobility will be way easier in terms of you changing from one vehicle to another, because hopefully they will have enough of overlap in terms of the way they operate and they work, that people can easily just get off one vehicle and board another one and still know what they're doing and still not put themselves at risk. But yeah, the
Very
noise
right.
pollution, weather conditions, think there are quite a few top problems.
Yeah, looking at the brighter side of the technology, I personally believe that increasing automated systems in the urban air mobility also present new opportunities as it can help in minimizing the cybersecurity threats because autonomous vehicles rely on fewer external resources and data. So that can actually prove out to be a boon for the manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers. Moving ahead, there is another question which talks about do you have a view on who is leading on cybersecurity for eVTOL and have standards been developed? So again, it is we don't
Again,
want to mention we don't want to mention few names.
yeah, please go ahead. I'll wait
But
on
yes,
that.
definitely it's a growing domain, and one has to look out for the new companies being evolved in this space. Obviously, there are a lot many companies who are already there, but in terms of aviation, they are there already there. But when we talk about UAM as one point, yes, a lot of growth can be seen in this sector of cybersecurity. So going ahead, there's a question which we were trying to miss, but yes, the question has come up that what do you think about the Volocopter's business plan? Is changing the drained batteries after every flight with new charging batteries feasible?
Oh, okay. Let's That's okay, right? That's very interesting. So, of course, swapping the batteries or keeping them fixed with the vehicle is a very interesting question. If you fix them and make it one part together with the vehicle, then you basically have electrical flying car, isn't it? Because that's how we're used to having our electric cars. You just have a car, you put it there, you wait for it to charge, and until it's charged, or at least it's charged to an extent, you can't really use it. So what you're doing is you're basically effectively leaving yourself without a vehicle. Should there be an emergency, there's nothing you can do. Well, unless it's a hybrid. If we're talking eVTOL, if we're talking business model for Volocopter, personally, I think their model is really, really interesting, and I really like it. I think, well, I don't know if the one who asked the question has seen a few videos from Volocopter, but their vision is to have their stations where they will have certain amount of Volocopters and certain amount of batteries, which each time you land on that heliport on that station, your battery will be changed and placed and recharged. The one which you've used before will be recharged. Hence, able for many, many people to board the aircraft very rapidly, very safely, and there'll basically be no delay in your commute. If you've booked your flight for 1920 and you're still waiting for the vehicle to charge at 1925, you can't do anything if it's a fixed battery. If a battery is fixed to a vehicle, is it? But of course, if it's just a matter of changing the battery, hopefully they'll place all the robots. I'm sure they will. They'll place all the robots and everything else required. They'll put the required infrastructure in place, and the change in the battery will be really fast, really rapid. So I'm sure they know what they're doing. I'm sure they're reasonable. I personally do. I will take the side. Yes, I do really like their business model. I think it makes sense to me.
Considering the dynamics of the market today, I guess commenting on someone's business plan as of now would not be very much viable because every day there are new things coming up, new developments coming up, there are new prototypes being developed, new technology being getting integrated into the prototypes. So I guess going forward, but yes, definitely it's an interesting space to look out for what companies are bringing in their business models. Basically, what innovations the companies are working on their business models. So that would be an interesting space to look for. So next question, if
Let's
we
just
talk
say
about,
that.
yeah.
Sorry, I'll just finish that one. Yeah, let's just say I tried to comment on the technology rather than the business model. So yes, it wasn't really the business model. It wasn't the complete business model the wallet has. Of course, it was just a part of it, but I think that particular part of it doesn't make sense to me. Sorry, go ahead. Next question.
Yeah. So it is an interesting question that talks about what do you think that are the main steps needed to enable a positive public perception. So I personally believe, I read it somewhere, that introducing urban air mobility as a tool for air ambulance would be the first thing to gauge public acceptance. What are your thoughts on it, Maria? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
I
can
think
hear
I'm
you
muted.
now.
Sorry, yes. I was
It's
saying
absolutely fine.
I was saying that I think the more use cases you will show to people, to public, the better the public acceptance will be. Of course, if we talk about transporting organs, transporting patients from um, when they live somewhere really rural or there is a very bad traffic, and if you can transport them by air very safely and very fast, of course people will understand that there is potential, there is a massive potential, and there is a massive need for the urban air mobility vehicles. So I definitely think that having it as an air ambulance is one of the best ways forward. In terms of everything else, in terms of shaping people's perspective, um, I think we all understand the complexity of the road ahead, but we just need to take a step at a time. And there are quite a few urban air mobility initiatives, like the European Innovation Partnership, backed by the EU Commission. There are quite a few by NASA. There are quite a few by in the UK and everywhere else in the world. The government, as well as um, private companies, they're all trying to shape people's perspective because we all understand that unless people will be using it, there is no need to produce any vehicles. I think the ways forward for if you're an urban manufacturer, I think you just need to make sure that you talk to your public, talk to what people are looking for, what people are needing. Make sure that you are allowing for the public to see your vehicle. You are allowing for the public to board it, to ask you questions. You're as approachable as you want for your vehicle to be. I have attended recently one of the air shows, and unfortunately, there were quite a few urban air mobility well, there are quite a few vehicles showcased, and one urban air mobility manufacturer decided that they do not want to share it as much with the public, and they left it on display only for those who had specific passes. And it was really, really sad to see that someone wants to be really, really closed and only show a little baby something where only to occupy a position in a society. I think we need to be as open, as honest with the public as possible. And yeah, then public will like you. I think so.
It will grow over time, I believe, as in the acceptance for even the autonomous vehicles. Some people are accepting it, some are not. Similarly, the acceptance for eVTOLs will also come with time. If we look at in the airspace, now the acceptance of drone have come drastically. Similarly, for the UAMs, it will come with time. Now the prototypes are being tested in different cities, and people who are being affected in the traffic congestion for hours, I guess they are in absolute need of this third dimension of mobility.
How are we
To
doing this
con-
time? Do we still have time to
Hmm.
answer questions, or would you like for us to try and answer them afterwards and just compose a document with the rest of our answers? What do you think?
Yes. So to address the audience right now, since the session can stop anytime, so there are few questions that are being unanswered. So we'll try to get back to you 101 in person, because we have your email IDs registered with us and we have the questions here in front of us. So we'll try to get back to you ASAP, and hopefully we were able to address most of the questions and we were able to deliver the landscape of urban air mobility. Also, we have a few more studies going along with this webinar. So we have few more reports, and I and Maria personally are working on trying to understand the landscape, the ecosystem of urban air mobility, and trying to get in touch with as many people from the industry across the value chain to understand the subject better and address the need. Is there anything that you want to add to it, Maria? And then we can conclude.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say that definitely we're all very, very thankful for your time, for your participation, for your questions. It's really great to see that people are keen, people are interested in this industry, people have questions to ask, people have matters which are bothering them. That's great to see. Thank you very much for everything. You have our emails, you have our names. It would be great if you want to ask us anything afterwards personally, and we'll definitely make sure that we'll get in touch with you afterwards, after the webinar, and answer the remaining questions which were left unanswered at this time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot then. This is signing off from Yajan and Maria. We were happy to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Maria. You too. Bye-bye.
Cordially fill in sample request for more details.